Weekend cooking competitions are a pretty common sight south of the Mason-Dixon line, but there was something very uncommon about the one held on a recent Saturday in Bentonville, Arkansas: the food itself.
Well, welcome to the 2015 World Champion Squirrel Cook-Off.
That's right, squirrel. Whether you find them adorable or think of them as rats with cuter tails, you've probably never considered eating them. That is, unless you're from the South.
Get to cooking! Woo!
You don't have to promote that it's organic, that it's grass-fed, anything of that nature. It just is. I mean, this is tree to table.
Joe Wilson is the guy behind the cook-off. He says cooking squirrel is a tradition that goes back generations.
It's extremely important that we hold on to the culture and the heritage of our community. I started this thing about 5 years ago to promote the sustainable use of wild game as a dinner, as a table fare.
In the cook-off, 36 colorfully named teams had 2 hours to produce a dish and a side dish. And all the squirrel being served had to be caught by the chefs themselves or their friends, since buying or selling wild game meat is actually illegal. Contest favorites, brothers Blaine and Brandon Estes, have won the competition twice in its 5-year history. This year, they were competing with squirrel sliders and a squirrel bisque.
Yeah, that sounds pretty fancy.
Sounds like we know what we're talking about.
You don't usually hear those words in the same sentence.
No.
Squirrel bisque.
No.
Here's the thing about cooking squirrel, though. Even if you're a 2-time world champion, you're going to get some pushback.
My wife wouldn't cook this.
No, and you know, our mom is a great cook, but even as kids, she wouldn't cook squirrel.
No.
If you shoot it, you have to eat it. Oh yeah, and you have to cook it too.
And that seems to be a big part of the messaging here, that this is an example of good animal stewardship, of eating what you hunt, even if it's a rodent.
True heaven.
We've now arrived at the part of the story where we are legally obligated to ask the question, on the minds of those still watching the program: how does squirrel taste?
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
Is it seasoned?
It's just plain boiled.
That's good.
It was my first taste of squirrel, but not my last. Inexplicably, I'd agreed to serve as one of the contest's judges, a decision I was beginning to regret.
So 80% of the meat inside the dish should be squirrel.
If I'm allergic to squirrel, is that a problem?
Once the judging was underway, though, I had to admit, most of the dishes tasted really good and showed amazing creativity.
Wow. Look at the placemat. This is like I'm in a Moroccan restaurant.
Of course, 20 or so dishes later, and I was the one starting to feel squirrely.
Wow. Awesome.
As these iron chefs tested my not-so-iron stomach, there was one silver lining.
This year, I think we were pretty light on squirrel desserts, but in the past, you know, we've had squirrel ice cream, we've had squirrel brains with a cream cheese and a puff pastry.
I'm happy that this was a light year for that,
Yeah,
considering that I was one of the judges.
The dessert category can be fairly rough.
The day's winning dish turned out to be squirrel empanadas with cilantro lime dipping sauce. It seemed fitting for a contest that's embraced by some and maligned by others that the winning dish was empanadas, something that wasn't even invented here, and yet couldn't have been more uniquely American.